My wife called me her poor ex, yet I still paid her rent. 3 years later, the truth was exposed, and when that door opened, the most powerful man in the room turned pale, his champagne glass slipped from his fingers, and the woman he had just gifted an apartment to realized, in front of 100 witnesses, that she had been living in a building owned by the man she had abandoned. Before we move on, tell me in the comments which state you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow's episode may touch a story that is still unfolding. The rooftop of the Sovereign, one of Midtown Atlanta's most celebrated luxury residences, was lit like a dream someone else was having. String lights stretched across the open sky. The skyline of Atlanta burned gold and silver in the distance, indifferent and magnificent. Waiters moved through the crowd like ghosts, offering champagne on silver trays. The night smelled of gardenias and expensive cologne and the particular brand of confidence that only inherited money produces. Andre Washington stood near the east railing, apart from the crowd, not hiding, simply present. His dark suit was clean, well-fitted, and 3 seasons old. He held a glass of sparkling water he had no intention of finishing. Around him, Atlanta's social elite laughed and clinked glasses and congratulated themselves for being exactly who they were. Nobody congratulated Andre. They looked at him the way people look at old furniture in a new house. Familiar, slightly out of place, kept around for reasons no one fully understands anymore. He had arrived 40 minutes ago. He had spoken to no one. He had been spoken about by nearly everyone. Simone Hayes, the woman he had loved for 4 years, the woman whose rent he had quietly paid for the last 36 months, was across the rooftop on the arm of Devereaux Cole. She wore a champagne-colored dress and a diamond necklace that caught light from 3 directions. She looked radiant. She looked happy. She looked like a woman who had successfully outrun her past. She had not looked directly at Andre since he arrived. Devereaux stood beside her, one hand at the small of her back, the other wrapped around a crystal glass. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and polished in the way that private schools and family money produce. His smile was the kind that never fully reached the eyes. He spoke loudly and laughed louder and made sure everyone within 20 feet understood that this was his night. Carlton Cole, Devereaux's father, held court near the center of the rooftop. He was a man built like a declaration, gray at the temples, impeccably dressed, radiating the easy authority of someone who had never once been told no. His wife, Renee Cole, stood beside him, her expression permanently arranged into something between warmth and judgment. Carlton had already looked at Andre twice tonight, both times with the same expression, the same quiet, satisfied dismissal, the look a man gives to a problem that has already been solved. Andre felt it both times. He didn't move, he didn't react. His right hand rested at his side, fingers loose, calm. Inside his jacket pocket, pressed against his chest, was a single folded document. He had been patient for 3 years. Tonight, patience had an ending. Atlanta in November has a particular cruelty. The cold doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, settles into everything, and refuses to leave. 3 years ago on a Tuesday evening, Andre sat in the empty living room of a Buckhead apartment and understood that the life he had built inside these walls was over. The furniture was still there. The photographs were still on the shelves. But the air had changed. Something fundamental had been removed from the room, and its absence made every familiar object look foreign. Simone sat across from him on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes red but dry. She had already finished crying. She was now in the stage that comes after the quiet, exhausted negotiation with reality. "We want different things, Andre," she had said. It was the sentence people use when they mean something more specific but lack the courage to say it plainly. He had not argued, he understood. He was an architect at a mid-size Atlanta firm, steady and skilled and genuinely passionate about his work. He designed buildings that would stand for 100 years, but he did not attend the right galas. He did not come from the right family. He did not speak the language of ambition that Simone had recently begun to learn. He understood all of this without her saying it. What he did not expect was what she said next. "I can't afford this place alone." Her voice was small, almost ashamed. "My salary doesn't cover it. I'd have to move back to my mother's house in Decatur." He looked at her, the woman he had spent 4 years building a life with. Whatever the love had become, whatever it had failed to be, he did not want to watch her diminish. "I'll cover the rent," he said, "until you find your footing." She looked up at him with something that was not quite love, but was close enough to break his heart cleanly. "Just 1 year," he said. "That gives you time." She nodded slowly. Then she cried again. This time he understood the crying was for herself, not for them. He was already peripheral. He was already the exit strategy. He moved out that weekend, 2 trips in his old Chevy Tahoe. He left the apartment key on the kitchen counter. "Change the locks," he told her. She nodded. She never did. He began transferring rent money on the 1st of every month. Clean, consistent, no conversation required. He returned to work. He buried himself in blueprints and building codes and the disciplined language of structure. He won a small design competition for a community center in Southwest Atlanta. A senior partner at the firm, a man named Elliot Greer, noticed the work. Everything that followed grew from that moment. But Simone did not know that yet. Nobody did. Elliot Greer was 61 years old and had spent 4 decades building Atlanta's skyline from the inside out. He was not a man who gave compliments freely. When he called Andre into his office 6 months after the community center win and told him the design showed a rare combination of discipline and instinct, Andre understood the weight of what was being said. Greer began assigning him larger projects. A mixed-use development in Old Fourth Ward, a boutique hotel concept in Inman Park. Andre worked with a quiet, consuming focus that other architects at the firm recognized but could not fully explain. He was not chasing recognition. He was building because it was the only language in which he felt completely fluent. His personal life was sparse. He lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in East Atlanta. He drove the same Chevy Tahoe. He ate at the same 3 restaurants. He saved and invested with the guidance of a financial advisor named Claudette Osai, who had been one of Greer's referrals and who treated money with the same architectural precision Andre brought to buildings. His portfolio grew in the background, silent and compounding. And then Simone called about Devereaux. It was 8 months after the breakup. Her voice had a new texture. Lighter, more certain. She met someone, she said. His name was Devereaux Cole. He was in private equity. His family had been in Atlanta real estate for 3 generations. He was wonderful. He was exactly what she had been looking for. Andre listened, said the right things, wished her well, meant it. The first time he encountered Devereaux in person was at a gallery opening in Ponce City Market. Simone had mentioned the event casually, not quite an invitation, but not a warning either. Andre went because a colleague's installation was featured. Devereaux was exactly what Andre had expected. Tall, immaculate, the kind of man who takes up space confidently and assumes the space was always meant for him. His handshake was a performance. His eye contact was a test. "You're the architect," Devereaux said, his tone arranging the word into something smaller than it was. Andre confirmed this without elaboration. "Simone told me you've been incredibly generous," Devereaux continued, keeping her covered while she got settled. He smiled. "That's real character, man, old school integrity." The compliment was assembled from the same materials as an insult. Andre recognized the craftsmanship. He said nothing that required a response. That evening, driving home on I-20, he understood that a narrative had already been written about him in their world. He was the devoted, slightly pitiable ex, the man who paid and stayed in his lane. He decided that evening to let them keep writing that story. It was more useful to him uncontested. The first time Carlton Cole spoke directly about Andre in front of a room full of people. It was at a birthday dinner for Renee Cole at Bones Restaurant in Buckhead. Andre had been invited by Simone, who still occasionally reached for the bridge between her old life and her new one, as though keeping him visible made her feel less guilty about what she was building. The private dining room was full of Cole family associates, old Atlanta money, the kind of people whose names appeared on hospital wings and university buildings. Andre arrived on time, which, he would later understand, was one of several small ways he had already failed their unspoken dress code of fashionable lateness. Carlton held the table's attention the way a man does when he has held it for 40 years without interruption. He told stories. He made declarations. He distributed his approval like a limited currency. Midway through the evening, Carlton raised his glass for a toast to his wife. It was gracious and practiced. Then, as the applause settled, his eyes found Andre across the table. "We should acknowledge another kind of loyalty tonight," Carlton said, his voice warm and carrying. He nodded toward Andre. This young man has been faithfully keeping a roof over Simon's head for the better part of a year. He paused, letting the room absorb the information. That's a certain kind of devotion. Old-fashioned, maybe, but admirable in its own way. The room responded with the particular laughter of people who are enjoying something they would deny enjoying if asked directly. Renee Cole smiled gently. Simone looked at her wine glass. Andre looked at Carlton. He did not smile. He did not shift in his seat. He simply held Carlton's gaze with an expression that gave nothing away. He raised his own glass slightly in a minimal acknowledgement and said nothing. Carlton interpreted the silence as acceptance. He was wrong. That evening marked the formal beginning of a pattern. The poor framing never stated that plainly, always delivered inside a compliment, always with Simone present and silent, became a recurring feature of Cole family social events. Andre was the cautionary tale that made Devereux look more impressive by contrast. The devoted, outclassed former partner still orbiting a life that had moved on without him. At a Thanksgiving gathering in the Cole estate in Ansley Park, Carlton made a joke about loyalty that drew the whole table's laughter and left Andre as the punchline. At a New Year's party in a Buckhead penthouse, Devereux told a group of his friends, loudly enough for Andre to hear, that he had his girlfriend's ex on a kind of monthly subscription plan. Andre heard every word. His hand each time found the same place in his jacket pocket. Resting, waiting. He was building something none of them could see yet. The third year of the arrangement moved differently than the first two. In the first year, the money Andre transferred on the first of every month felt like the last act of a love that had already ended. In the second year, it felt like the quiet maintenance of a promise. By the third year, it felt like something else entirely. It felt like infrastructure. The mockery had fully institutionalized by then. It was no longer delivered with even the pretense of affection. At Simone's 30th birthday celebration at a private event space in Ponce City Market, Devereux gave a toast. He spoke about Simone's beauty and his love for her, and then, with the crowd warm and receptive, he turned toward the corner of the room where Andre stood holding a glass he had not touched. He said, and his voice had the polished ease of a man who had rehearsed this, that he wanted to acknowledge a true Atlanta gentleman. A man so committed to Simone's comfort that he had maintained his support even after their chapter ended. The room applauded. A few people turned to look at Andre with expressions arranged somewhere between sympathy and amusement. Andre raised his glass in the same minimal, unreadable gesture he always used on these occasions. Simone looked away. He left early, not from pain, from efficiency. He had seen what he needed to see. Their confidence was total. Their narrative about him was sealed and load-bearing. They had built their contempt on the assumption that his payments were the behavior of a man without options. They had never once considered that a man with every option might simply choose patience. During those 3 years, Andre's professional life had become unrecognizable from what it was at the start. After Greer's retirement, he partnered with 2 senior colleagues to restructure the firm under a new identity, Ironclad Design Group. The rebranding was quiet and precise. Within 18 months, Ironclad had won contracts for a boutique hotel in Sweet Auburn, a sustainable residential tower in West Midtown, and a cultural arts complex that Atlanta Magazine called one of the most anticipated architectural projects in the city's recent history. He was reshaping Atlanta's skyline. He drove the same Tahoe. He wore the same category of suit. He kept his life quiet, his profile low, and his counsel close. His financial advisor, Claudette, had flagged an opportunity in the second year of the arrangement. The building where Simone lived, a beautiful pre-war structure on Peachtree Road in Buckhead, had come available through a private estate sale. The family wanted a quick, clean transaction. Andre did not hesitate. Through a newly formed private trust, registered under the name Ironwood Property Holdings, he purchased the entire building. The transaction was handled entirely by his attorney, a methodical and discreet woman named Victoria Mensah. The rent he paid each month now returned to an account he controlled. He had bought the building from underneath their story, and not one of them knew. Victoria Mensah had practiced real estate and trust law in Atlanta for 22 years. She had managed complex transactions, difficult clients, and situations that required the kind of discretion that never appears on a resume. She was not easily surprised. When Andre sat across from her in her Peachtree Center office and explained the full structure of what he wanted, the purchase of the building, the continuation of the existing rent arrangement, the circular redirection of funds, she was quiet for a long moment before responding. "This is unusual," she said. "Most things worth doing are," Andre replied. She reviewed the purchase documents for the building at 2240 Peachtree Road. The structure was sound. The title was clean. The estate heirs wanted speed and privacy, both of which Andre could provide. "You understand," she said, "that once this transaction closes, you will own the building your former partner lives in. The rent she believes she is paying to a third party will in fact be returning to your own account. You will be, in every legal sense, her landlord." "Yes," Andre said. "And you intend to continue this arrangement indefinitely." "Until it ends naturally," he said, "or until something forces the ending." Victoria looked at him steadily. She was a woman who had learned to read people from the quality of their silences. His silence was not evasive, it was architectural. He had planned every load-bearing wall. She prepared the documents. Ironwood Property Holdings was incorporated as a private trust, with Andre named as sole director and beneficiary. The building at 2240 Peachtree Road was transferred into the trust's ownership. The existing property management company was retained and instructed that all communications regarding ownership were to be directed exclusively through Victoria's office. On a Wednesday morning in early spring, the transaction closed quietly. Andre did not celebrate. He went back to his office. He approved a revised facade design for the West Midtown Tower project. He took a call from a city planning commissioner about zoning for the arts complex. He ate lunch at his desk. That evening he had a new key cut, a master key for 2240 Peachtree Road. It was a simple brass key, worn-looking, unremarkable. He put it in his jacket pocket. He wore it every day after that, not as a symbol of ownership, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of the difference between what people see and what is actually true. Every time Carlton Cole dismissed him with a chuckle, every time Devereux made him the punchline of a toast, every time Simone looked away rather than defend a single year of what they had shared, Andre's hand would settle into his pocket and his fingers would find the key. And he would remain still. Patience, he had learned, was not the absence of power. It was the most disciplined form of it. The call came on a Thursday evening in October. Andre was at the Ironclad Design Group offices in Old Fourth Ward, reviewing the final elevation drawings for the arts complex. The city had approved the last variants that afternoon. His team had celebrated with takeout from a Jamaican spot on Edgewood Avenue. By 9 o'clock, most of the office had emptied. He was alone at the drafting table, pencil in hand, the Atlanta skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His phone rang. Simone. Her calls had become infrequent over the past year. When they came, they were brief, logistical, slightly uncomfortable on both ends. He answered on the third ring. Andre, her voice was different, lit from the inside. "I have news." He set down his pencil. "Devereux proposed," she said. "Last weekend, we're engaged." He registered the information cleanly. Whatever emotional weight it might have carried 2 years ago had long since been redistributed into something quieter. "Congratulations, Simone," he said. "I mean that." She exhaled. "Thank you. That actually means a lot to hear." There was a brief silence, the kind that old familiarity produces. "We're having an engagement party," she continued, 3 weeks from Saturday. "At the Sovereign, the rooftop. I'd like you to come." He said nothing for a moment. "I know it might be strange," she said quickly, "but it would mean a lot to me." And she paused. "Carlton is going to make an announcement that night about the apartment. He's going to buy it for us as an engagement gift. He says it's time to close the loop on everything." Andre's hand moved to his jacket pocket. "He's buying the apartment," Andre said. His voice was level, precisely level. "Yes, isn't it incredible? He's been talking to lawyers all week. He says for the right price, everything can be arranged." Andre looked out at the Atlanta skyline. He could identify 2 of his own completed buildings from this window. He had designed the bones of this city from the inside out, quietly, for years. Nobody in the Cole family knew that yet. "I'll be there," he said. "Oh, thank you, Andre. And you can bring the final check, the last one." She laughed softly, a sound that was trying too hard to be light. "I'll bring it," he said. She hung up. He sat still for several minutes. Then he picked up his phone and called Victoria Mensa. She answered immediately. "Victoria," he said, "it's Andre. It's time. Devereaux's father is planning to purchase the building. He's announcing it at the engagement party in 3 weeks." A pause. "Shall I prepare the full portfolio?" she asked. "Everything," he said. "The deed, the trust documents, the chain of title, the rent account statements for the full 36 months. I want it complete." "Understood. What time does the party end?" "Have it with you by 9 o'clock in the evening," he said. "Not before. Let them have their moment first." Victoria was quiet for exactly 1 second. "A high platform," she said, "makes for a long fall." "Exactly," Andre said. He ended the call, picked up his pencil, and returned to the drawing. The rooftop of the Sovereign at 8:45 in the evening was everything money could assemble in one place. Gardenias and white roses covered every surface. The string quartet in the far corner played something elegant and forgettable. 100 guests moved through the warm October air in their finest versions of themselves. The Atlanta skyline burned behind them, indifferent and immense. Andre stood near the east railing, still, present, unremarkable to everyone who looked his way. He had arrived at 8 o'clock with a white envelope in his jacket pocket and the brass key beside it. Simone had come to him immediately, her smile stretched tight with the effort of managing too many emotions at once. "You came," she said. "I said I would," he replied. He handed her the envelope, the last one. She took it quickly, the way people take things they are ashamed to need. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she moved back toward Devereaux. Carlton Cole descended on Andre 12 minutes later. He clapped him on the shoulder with the full weight of his hand. The gesture was designed to be both familiar and diminishing. "Glad you're here," Carlton said. "Tonight is a closing ceremony in a way, for all of us." Andre met his eyes, said nothing. At 8:45, Carlton tapped a knife against his crystal glass. The music stopped, the crowd turned. Carlton stood with Devereaux and Simone on either side of him, his face luminous with the pleasure of a man delivering his finest performance. He spoke about love. He spoke about family. He spoke about what it meant to welcome Simone fully into the Cole name. His voice was practiced and resonant and filled the rooftop without effort. Then he came to the gift. He gestured broadly at the building beneath their feet. He described his intention to purchase 2240 Peachtree Road outright, a cash offer, a new beginning, a foundation. The crowd responded with genuine warmth. Simone pressed her hand to her mouth. Devereaux smiled the smile of a man receiving what he expected. Then Carlton turned and looked directly at Andre. His voice softened into something that was meant to sound like generosity. "And Liam," he caught himself. "Andre," he corrected smoothly. He said his name the way men say the names of people they have already decided are beneath correction. "Your duty is done," Carlton said. "You kept your promise. Simone is taken care of now, truly and completely. You can rest easy." The room was watching. Andre stood still. He let the silence stretch 4 full seconds, 5, 6. Then he stepped forward. "That's a generous thought, Richard." He paused. "Carlton," he corrected himself quietly. His tone made the correction feel intentional. "There is just one problem," Andre said. His voice was not loud. It carried anyway. Carlton's smile held, but something behind it shifted. "What problem? Money is never a problem." Andre looked at him steadily. "You cannot buy this building," he said. 3 words, simple, final, undecorated. The rooftop went completely still. The silence after those 3 words was not empty. It was structural. It had weight and dimension, the way a building has weight after the scaffolding comes down. Carlton Cole stared at Andre with the expression of a man who had not been contradicted in recent memory. The smile was gone. The warmth was gone. What remained was the hard, unornamented face of a man whose authority had just been questioned publicly. "What did you say?" Carlton's voice had dropped an octave. Andre held his gaze. He did not raise his voice. He did not shift his weight. "You cannot buy this building," he repeated. "It is not available for purchase. It belongs to a private trust that has no interest in selling." Carlton let out a short, sharp sound that was not quite a laugh. "A trust?" He looked around the room, inviting the crowd to share his amusement. "Son, I've dissolved trusts over breakfast. I'll find whoever is behind that paperwork and I will write a check that ends the converse." The crowd was no longer a party, it was an audience. Simon's face had gone pale. Devereux looked back and forth between his father and Andre with an expression that was trying to find the angle that made sense. "That's the second problem," Andre said. His voice remained even, almost quiet. "The trust values its privacy. It does not accept unsolicited offers, and its director has no interest in selling to you or to anyone in this room." Carlton took a step forward, the step of a man closing the distance on a problem. "And how exactly would you know that?" Andre's right hand moved into his jacket pocket. He removed the brass key and held it up between two fingers, letting it catch the rooftop light. "This is a master key," he said, "for 2240 Peachtree Road, the full building." The room had stopped breathing. Carlton stared at the key, then at Andre's face. The color of certainty began to drain from his expression. Andre spoke then, not just to Carlton, but to all of them. His voice was controlled and precise, the way a structure is controlled and precise, every word placed to bear weight. "For 3 years," he said, "your family has treated my promise as a punchline. You've called me the devoted ex, the poor former partner still subsidizing the life he couldn't provide. You've toasted my consistency at parties and mocked my character in private. You took an act of integrity and used it to sharpen your own sense of superiority." He looked at Devereux. "You told your friends you had me on a monthly subscription plan." He looked at Renee Cole. "You called my continued support sad, even as the stability it provided made your family's entrance into Simon's life easier." He looked at Carlton. "And you just stood in front of 100 people and dismissed me like a retired employee." He paused. "You cannot buy this building, Carlton, because I already own it. I have owned it for the past 2.5 years. Ironwood Property Holdings is my trust. The rent I transferred every month has been returning to my own account. You have been holding your parties and making your toasts and laughing at your landlord." The silence that followed was the loudest thing the rooftop had ever contained. The door opened. A woman in a conservative navy suit walked in, carrying a leather briefcase with the unhurried confidence of someone immune to atmosphere. She walked directly to the marble surface of the rooftop bar and set down the briefcase. "My name is Victoria Mensah," she said, her voice clean and carrying. "I am legal counsel for Ironwood Property Holdings." She opened the briefcase. One document at a time, she laid them on the surface. The deed, the trust incorporation papers, the chain of title, the rent account statements, 36 months, every transfer, a closed loop beginning and ending with Andre Washington. No one spoke. Carlton looked at the documents for a long time. Then he sat down in the nearest chair. The rooftop emptied the way parties do, when the reason for the party has been removed. Not all at once, in small, urgent clusters. Guests who minutes earlier had been celebrating with genuine warmth were suddenly remembering early mornings, other obligations, cars waiting downstairs. They offered quick, murmured words to Andre on their way out. Their tones had changed. The sympathy was gone. In its place was something more careful, something close to respect, edged with caution. Within 20 minutes, the rooftop held only the Cole family, Simone Victoria Mensah quietly packing her briefcase, and Andre. Carlton Cole sat in the chair he had found when his legs gave way to the weight of the documents. He had not moved. The documents were still spread on the bar surface. He looked at them the way a man looks at a medical diagnosis, understanding every word, unable to fully accept the sum of them. Renee Cole stood beside him, one hand on his shoulder, her face arranged into a stillness that was not peace. Devereux had moved away from Simone, several feet away, which was not a large distance physically but was absolute in every other sense. He turned to her, and his voice when it came was low and vicious and stripped of all its polish. "You had to have known," he said. Simone shook her head. Her tears were real. "I had no idea." He looked at her with the expression of a man who had decided what was convenient to believe. "You let my family embarrass themselves. You let us look like fools." "That's enough." Andre's voice cut across the rooftop, not raised, not hard, simply final. Devereux turned on him. "You think this was justice? Standing there for 3 years, collecting humiliations, waiting for your moment." Andre looked at him without anger. "I wasn't collecting anything," he said. "I was keeping a promise. What your family chose to build on top of that promise is not my responsibility. You wrote this evening. I just showed up to the final act." Devereux had nothing left to build a response from. He looked at Simone one last time, a long, cold, finished look, and walked toward the rooftop exit without another word. Simone stood alone in the center of the space. She looked at Andre, and for the first time in 3 years she was not performing. She was not managing. She was simply a woman looking at a man she had fundamentally failed to see. "I am so sorry," she said. Her voice was small and direct and real. Andre looked at her. The old warmth was there, somewhere, the way the bones of a demolished building remain in the soil, but it was not returning to the surface. "I know," he said. He meant it without comfort. He turned to Victoria, who nodded once and lifted her briefcase. He walked to the rooftop exit. He did not look back. 6 months later, on a Tuesday morning in April, Andre stood on the upper terrace of the completed West Midtown residential tower. The building had been awarded 2 architectural honors the previous week. His name was on both citations. Atlanta spread below him, wide and bright and still becoming itself. The Cole family's public humiliation had moved quietly through Atlanta's social and business corridors. Carlton's reputation for unassailable judgment had developed a fracture. 3 partners had withdrawn from a major development deal he was structuring. The foundation of his empire, built as much on perception as capital, was being quietly reevaluated. Devereaux and Simone's engagement had not survived the month. Simone, Andre had heard through a mutual acquaintance, was living in a small apartment in Ormwood Park. She was working as a coordinator at an art foundation in Castleberry Hill. She had enrolled in a ceramics class on Saturday mornings. She was building something modest and entirely her own. He felt no satisfaction at the Crofts' collapse. He felt no wound at Simone's struggle. He felt something cleaner than either. He reached into his jacket pocket. It was empty. He had left the brass key on Victoria's desk the morning after the party. He did not need it anymore. The building at 2240 Peachtree Road had been quietly listed through Ironwood's management. It would be sold in the spring to a young couple from East Point who had spent 4 years saving for exactly this. He had kept his promise. He had protected his integrity. He had outlasted every story they told about him. And now, standing above the city he had quietly helped reshape, Andre Washington put his hands in his empty pockets and simply looked at what patience and principle over time could build. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was his. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching.